The sun blazed high over the Arizona plateau, spreading its gold across the land like a promise that refused to fade. Dust hung in the air, slow and shimmering, as two riders made their way toward a lonely homestead nestled beside a dried-up creek. The older man slumped in his saddle, his breathing ragged, blood dried on his shirt. Beside him rode a boy no older than 16, his jaw clenched, his dark hair whipping in the wind. His name was Elias Greyhawk, half Navajo, half white, born to a man who once believed that hard work could tame the desert. His father, Thomas Greyhawk, had built their ranch plank by plank, every fence post sunk by his own hands. But greed was a wildfire in those lands, and men with money had begun to burn through anything that stood in their way. 3 days ago, those men came, led by Clayton Reeves, a ranch baron whose fortune was built on fear. They claimed Thomas had stolen cattle, a lie cooked up to justify taking his land. When he stood his ground, they dragged him into the street and beat him until he stopped moving. Elias had thrown himself at them, but a rifle butt across the head ended that fight. When he awoke, his father was broken, his home in ashes. Now, as they reached the creek bed, Thomas slid from his horse and collapsed. The boy caught him, laying his father's head in his lap. The old man's voice was weak, rasping through cracked lips. "Son, don't fight them. You'll lose everything." Elias looked down at him, eyes burning with tears that refused to fall. "They already took everything, Pa. What's left to lose?" The wind swept across the plain, hot and relentless. "Your soul," Thomas whispered. "Don't. Let hate take it." But Elias didn't answer. His gaze lifted toward the distant mesas, red, jagged, ancient. Beyond them was the Navajo nation, where his mother's people still lived, proud and quiet. He had visited only once as a child, when his mother took him to her brother's hogan near the cliffs of Chinle. Those people had taught him something his father never understood, that land isn't owned, it's shared with those who honor it. When Thomas fell into sleep, Elias stood and faced the horizon. His hands were shaking, not from fear but from fire. "You built this land with your blood," he said quietly, "and I'll make sure they remember whose dust they walk on." He took his father to an old friend's cabin, a blacksmith named Harlan, who owed Thomas more than a few debts, and left him there to recover. Then, without a word to anyone, Elias rode west. The desert stretched endless and merciless, but he didn't stop. For 4 days and nights, he rode through heat that cracked the ground, through canyons that whispered in languages older than memory. His horse stumbled twice, nearly falling, but the boy pressed on. At last, as the 5th morning rose, the red cliffs of his mother's homeland loomed before him, glowing in the sunrise like fire-made stone. The Navajo camp lay quiet, smoke rising from small fires, the air filled with the scent of sage. Men turned as he rode in, tall, silent riders with eyes like flint. At their center stood Chief Ashki Nez, his uncle broad-shouldered and calm as a mountain. He recognized Elias instantly. "You've come home with anger," the old man said. "Anger makes a poor guest." Elias dismounted, dust swirling around his boots. "They beat my father, uncle, took our land, burned what we built." His voice broke, but he didn't lower his head. "I want to take it back." The chief studied him for a long moment, his expression unreadable. "And what will you give for it?" "Whatever I have, even peace." The boy hesitated. Then he nodded. Chief Ashki turned toward the cliffs. "The white man's laws are his weapons, but the earth has its own justice. If you fight, it must be for balance, not revenge." He motioned toward a circle of riders, assembling near the camp's edge. "You are your mother's son, and her people will ride with you. But you must remember, the desert sees all hearts clearly. If yours turns black, it will bury you." By midday, the sound of hooves thundered through the valley. 400 Navajo warriors, faces painted, rifles strapped, banners streaming, rode behind Elias as he led them east toward the plains. Their horses gleamed in the sun, and the earth trembled with each stride. From the cliffs the elders watched, the old chief standing tall in the sunlight. "May the boy return not with vengeance," he said softly, "but with justice." And as Elias rode at the head of that mighty column, His heart burned with a single truth. The time for mercy had ended, but the time for honor had just begun. The sun was merciless that day, burning across the plains as if it too sought revenge. The sound of 400 hooves thundered through the valley like the heartbeat of the earth itself. From every ridge and canyon, dust rose in great swirling clouds, a living storm. At its head rode Elias Greyhawk, his face calm, his eyes hard as the desert rock. Word of his return spread faster than fire on dry grass. Ranchers, miners, and settlers abandoned their chores to stare at the horizon, where the boy they had mocked now rode like a legend from the old songs. Behind him, the Navajo warriors came. Straight-backed, proud, their horses painted with sacred symbols, their rifles gleaming in the sun. No one spoke. The land itself seemed to hold its breath. When Elias reached the edge of Reeves Valley, he halted the riders. The vast spread of Clayton Reeves's ranch lay below, white fences, fat cattle, and a grand house that stood like arrogance carved in wood. Elias's jaw tightened. He remembered the laughter of Reeves' men as they kicked his father in the dust. He remembered his mother's grave, unmarked but sacred in his heart. Chief Ashkey's nephew, a warrior named Tahoe, rode beside him. "You mean to burn it?" he asked quietly. Elias shook his head. "No, fire would make us no better than them." "Then what?" "We take back what's ours and show them what men of honor look like." He rode forward alone, sunlight blazing off his shoulders. The men at the ranch gates stiffened as he approached. One of them, a red-faced foreman, spat into the dirt. "Well, I'll be damned. The half-breed pups come back from the desert, and with a whole circus, I see." Elias stopped a few yards away, dismounted slowly, and said in a low, even voice, "Tell Clayton Reeves the boy he beat half dead is here to finish the conversation." The man hesitated, then turned to run. Within minutes, Reeves himself came out onto the porch, adjusting his vest and hat like a man expecting company. "So you survived," he drawled. "I thought your kind gave up easier." "I learned from your kind," Elias replied. Reeves glanced past him to the horizon, the long line of mounted warriors stretching as far as the eye could see. A flicker of fear crossed his face before he covered it with a smirk. "You planning to start a war, boy?" Elias's voice was calm. "No, I came to end one." He reached into his saddlebag and pulled out a folded paper, the deed to his father's land, signed in blood from the beating Reeves' men had given. "This paper," Elias said, holding it up in the sunlight, "was forced. My father never sold." "You stole it," Reeves sneered. "Law's on my side. The earth isn't." At a signal, the line of Navajo riders advanced. Their horses moved as one, a wall of living thunder that stopped just short of the fence. Reeves' men scrambled, rifles half raised, but the warriors didn't aim. They simply waited, silent, unyielding, eyes cold as the mesas. Reeves barked, "You think you can scare me with savages?" Elias took a step forward. "No, Mr. Reeves, I came to teach you fear, the kind that lives in your soul when you see truth too late." From behind him, Tahoe rode forward, holding a simple wooden staff carved with the symbols of the Diné, the people. He planted it firmly in the ground between the two men. "This land remembers," he said. "It knows who walks with honor and who walks with greed." Elias turned to the gathered townsfolk who had come to watch. "You all saw what he did," he called out. "He burned our house, beat my father, and called it justice. But I will not hang him. I will not burn him. I will do something worse. I'll leave him with his shame." Then he looked at Reeves. "You'll leave this land before sunset. You'll take your cattle, your gold, and your lies, but not 1 inch of the soil you stole stays under your name. If you don't, these men will stay until justice does." The crowd murmured, shifting uneasily. Reeves tried to laugh, but his voice cracked. "And if I refuse?" Elias met his gaze. "Then the earth will swallow your house whole, and every man here will say it was the hand of God." Something in Elias's calm tone broke whatever courage Reeves had left. He backed away, sweat glistening under the white sun. "You're mad," he hissed. "No," Elias said quietly. "I'm my father's son." By noon, Reeves and his men had packed and left, their wagons rattling into the distance under the merciless sun. Not a single Navajo rider moved until the dust from those wagons disappeared. Then, as the valley fell silent, Chief Ashkey raised his hand, and the riders let out a single unified cry that echoed across the plains, a sound not of war, but of triumph. Elias stood at the gate looking out over his father's land. For the first time in months, the air smelled like peace, dry sage, warm soil, and freedom.